Have you ever wondered why people in crowds act so differently than they do alone? Why peaceful individuals can turn into a destructive mob? How a charismatic leader can sway millions into believing a cause, no matter how irrational? In 1895, French psychologist Gustave Le Bon cracked the code of crowd behavior in his book, The Crowd, A Study of the Popular Mind. His insights are shocking, timeless, and more relevant today than ever before. In an age where social media forms digital mobs in seconds, Le Bon's warnings might be worth revisiting. So we're going to briefly dive into the mind of the crowd and uncover the hidden forces that drive mass movements, and how leaders manipulate them to change the course of history. Le Bon's core argument is simple yet profound. When individuals come together to form a crowd, they lose their sense of self. They stop thinking logically and start acting based on emotion and instinct. In a crowd, the individual dissolves. What emerges in its place is a new collective mind, one that's impulsive, irrational, and prone to extreme behavior. Some today might call it the hive mind, where the thoughts and expressions of the individual dissolve and meld into one. Take a peaceful protest that suddenly spirals into violence. Nobody planned it, but emotions like anger and fear spread through the crowd like wildfire. And before you know it, rational people are smashing windows, flipping cars, and setting buildings on fire. Le Bon said, "The masses have never thirsted after truth. They turn aside from evidence that is not to their taste, preferring to deify error if error seduce them. Whoever can supply them with illusions is easily their master. Whoever attempts to destroy their illusions is always their victim. An individual in a crowd is a grain of sand amid other grains of sand, which the wind stirs up at will." Le Bon's assertion that the masses have never thirsted after truth suggests a skeptical view of human nature, especially when individuals become a part of a larger group or society. He argues that people are more interested in comforting narratives, simple solutions, and emotionally satisfying beliefs than in seeking out objective truths that might challenge their existing worldview. This observation points to the psychological tendency of people to avoid cognitive dissonance, that discomfort of holding contradictory ideas or confronting evidence that disrupts their sense of reality. Instead of grappling with uncomfortable truths, they gravitate toward ideas that align with their preconceptions, even if those ideas are false. In the modern world, this phenomenon can be seen in the spread of misinformation and mainstream official stories, and the influence of charismatic leaders or media figures who offer simplified versions of reality. The masses, Le Bon suggests, prefer to believe in myths or illusions because they provide certainty and emotional security, whereas the truth is often complex, ambiguous, and unsettling. And there's a little twist in this. Crowds can be immensely powerful forces for change. They can topple regimes, start revolutions, and reshape societies, but often in unpredictable and destructive ways. Le Bon seems to have understood this dual nature of crowds. They're both a force of destruction and a force for progress. And the key to understanding them is recognizing that the crowd mind operates on emotion, not reason. So what happens when people lose their individuality in a crowd? According to Le Bon, three things take over. Number one, anonymity. Number 2, contagion. And number 3, suggestibility. As for anonymity, in a crowd, people feel anonymous. They shed personal responsibility because they feel invisible. That's why people in mobs will commit acts that they would never dream of doing alone. As for contagion, emotions spread like a virus in crowds. When one person yells, another person yells. When one person throws a rock, others follow. This emotional contagion overrides logic. As for suggestibility, the crowd becomes highly suggestible, almost hypnotized by ideas and symbols. And once an idea takes hold, it becomes the crowd's truth, no matter how irrational it is. So LeBone warns that this combination makes crowds incredibly easy to manipulate. And history shows us just how dangerous this can be. Throughout history, charismatic leaders have risen to power by understanding how to control the emotions of the masses. They don't appeal to logic, they appeal to fears, hopes, and desires. LeBone gives us examples of leaders like Napoleon, who knew how to use symbols, grand gestures, and simple slogans to captivate entire populations. These leaders understand that the crowd wants simple, emotional answers to complex problems. Does that sound familiar? Think of modern political campaign slogans like "Make America Great Again," or "Yes, we can," or "Change we can believe in." They're not detailed policies, they're emotional triggers. And once the crowd adopts these ideas, they believe them with absolute conviction. LeBone describes this process as suggestion, the art of planting ideas so deeply they feel like truth. But here's the dark side. Once a crowd believes something, dissent is crushed. The crowd doesn't tolerate opposing views. It demands unity and loyalty. LeBone also warns that crowds are inherently conservative, not politically, but in their resistance to change. They cling to traditions and familiar ideas. But when they do shift, their changes are often radical and destructive. Think of the French Revolution. It began with ideals of liberty and equality, but quickly devolved into chaos and bloodshed. Why? Because once the crowd seized power, emotions overrode reason. Or consider more recent examples. The rise of fascist movements in the 20th century or today's online cancel culture. In both cases, crowds demanded simple solutions to complex problems, and anyone who disagreed was silenced or punished. Now, fast forward to today. LeBone couldn't have predicted social media, but his insights apply perfectly to our digital age. Social media platforms create virtual crowds where emotions spread faster than ever. A single tweet can spark outrage, protests, or even political revolutions. These digital mobs behave just like physical ones: anonymity, contagion, and suggestibility. Think about it. Why do people participate in online pile-ons or cancel culture? It's the same psychological process LeBone described over a century ago. And here's something to consider. The leaders of modern crowds aren't always individuals. Sometimes it's just a hashtag, a viral post, or misinformation. LeBone goes on to say that whoever can supply them with illusions is easily their master. This highlights the dangerous power dynamic between the masses and those who understand how to manipulate their emotions and desires. Leaders, propagandists, or influencers who offer comforting narratives, grand visions or scapegoats to blame for society's problems can easily gain control over the masses. Historically, authoritarian leaders and demagogues have risen to power by exploiting this psychological vulnerability. By providing illusions or promises of a perfect society, a common enemy, or a return to a mythical past, they can secure the loyalty of the crowd. These illusions often appeal to the emotions, bypassing rational thought. For example, political slogans that promise to make a country great again, or offers change we can believe in, or claims we're not going back, or identify a group as a source of societal problems, play on people's fears and desires for certainty and control. These illusions simplify complex social issues and provide a sense of meaning and direction to those who feel lost or disillusioned. And LeBon also warns of the danger faced by those who attempt to confront these illusions with inconvenient truths. He says, whoever attempts to destroy their illusions is always their victim. Truth tellers, reformers, and critics often face backlash because their message threatens the emotional comfort that people derive from their illusions. Instead of being rewarded for their honesty, they're often vilified, persecuted, or ignored. Throughout history, figures who challenged prevailing illusions, whether in politics, religion, or science, have often been met with resistance, hostility, or violence. Socrates, Galileo, and many on social media who have been deplatformed for questioning popular narratives are examples of individuals who faced severe consequences for challenging the dominant narratives of their time. Even today, whistleblowers and journalists who expose corruption or inconvenient truths often find themselves ostracized or attacked by those who would rather cling to comforting lies. LeBon then uses a powerful metaphor to describe the loss of individuality in a crowd. He says, an individual in a crowd is a grain of sand amid other grains of sand, which the wind stirs up at will. This imagery underscores the notion that when individuals become a part of a larger group, they lose their capacity for independent thought and become susceptible to external influences. In a crowd, personal responsibility and critical thinking are often diminished. People in groups are more likely to be swayed by emotions, peer pressure, and charismatic leaders than by rational arguments. The metaphor of grains of sand also suggests the randomness and unpredictability of crowd behavior. The wind, representing outside forces like propaganda, demagogues, or cultural trends, can easily stir them up and direct them in any direction. In essence, LeBon warns that individuals, when assimilated into a crowd, become passive and malleable, losing their agency, individuality, and sense of responsibility. LeBon's insights are remarkably relevant in the digital age, where social media and mass communication have amplified the influence of crowds. Viral misinformation, echo chambers, and mob mentality have become pervasive in online spaces. The same psychological tendencies that LeBon observed over a century ago are now playing out on a global scale and with unprecedented speed and reach. And you better believe that modern politicians, influencers, and corporations use these tendencies to their advantage, crafting narratives that appeal to emotions rather than reason. In this context, those who attempt to debunk misinformation or challenge popular illusions often find themselves targeted by online mobs or discredited as part of an opposing isolationist faction. LeBon's work serves as a warning about the importance of critical thinking and the dangers of blind conformity. It reminds us that the pursuit of truth requires effort, courage, and a willingness to challenge comforting illusions. even at the risk of becoming unpopular or marginalized. Le Bon's book is a powerful commentary on human nature and the dynamics of mass psychology. It highlights the human tendency to seek comfort in illusions, the ease with which leaders can manipulate the masses by offering those illusions, and the difficulties faced by truth tellers who challenge the status quo. His insights are a reminder of the importance of critical thinking, individuality, and the need to remain vigilant against the seductive power of comforting falsehoods in both political and social spheres. We must struggle against being a conformist and cling to the path as a moralist. Conformists do what they're told regardless of what is right, but a moralist will do what is right regardless of what he's told. So what can we learn from Gustave Le Bon? First, understand that crowds aren't inherently good or evil, but they are dangerously irrational. If you ever find yourself swept up in a movement, stop and ask, am I thinking for myself or am I just following the crowd? Second, be aware of leaders who appeal to your emotions rather than your mind. They may be manipulating you. And finally, recognize that the power of the crowd can shape history, for better or worse. Le Bon's final warning is this: the age of crowds is upon us, and those who can master the art of influencing the masses will shape the future of humanity. As we navigate a world filled with protests, rallies, religions, political movements, and online mobs, let's remember that the crowd mind is both a powerful tool and a dangerous weapon. So the question is, are you thinking for yourself, or are you just a part of the crowd? The beginning of a revolution is, in reality, the end of a belief.